We have been told from childhood that the mind is an instrument to be sharpened, expanded, and filled. Every book, every system of education, every self-help method whispers the same promise: you can become more intelligent, more creative, more powerful. And in that promise hides a subtle poison, because the very desire to become something is the seed of limitation. The mind, trained by comparison, lives in constant measurement. It asks, am I better than yesterday? Am I closer to success? This movement, though it appears to move forward, is actually a circle, a repetition of the same urge under different disguises. The craving for expansion becomes the cage. Look at how the mind moves. It collects ideas like a merchant gathers goods. It stores memories, beliefs, techniques. It repeats the words of others and calls it understanding. It decorates its prison with knowledge, yet the walls remain. The mind that seeks to expand through accumulation is only inflating its own boundaries. We read about geniuses, saints, philosophers, and wonder what secret allowed them to touch something vast. We imagine a hidden chamber within the brain, a latent potential waiting to be awakened. So we chase after it through meditation systems, concentration exercises, affirmations. We try to force the mind into silence, into clarity, into brilliance. But the very force that seeks to control is the essence of confusion. When you watch the mind quietly, you see how restless it is. It moves from one thought to another, like a monkey jumping from branch to branch. One moment it seeks pleasure, the next it avoids pain. It clings to memories of joy and runs from the shadows of fear. This movement is what we call living, but it is mechanical. It is repetition disguised as choice. To unlock the full potential of such a mind is impossible, because the potential itself is trapped within the structure of conditioning. A conditioned mind cannot be free, and without freedom there is no vastness, no depth. The very question, how do I unlock my potential, may itself be a wrong question. Because hidden inside that question is the assumption that there is a you who can manipulate the mind to reach some greater state. Observe how the self separates itself from the mind. You say, my mind, as though it was something you own. But the self and the mind are not two. The self is the process of thought, and thought is the self. When you say, I must improve my mind, the one who seeks improvement is a product of the same thought it tries to control. It is like the shadow trying to chase the light. We are taught to worship thought, to solve every problem through analysis. Yet the more the mind analyzes itself, the more tangled it becomes. Thought can never understand itself because it is limited by the very field of memory from which it arises. It can modify, rearrange, refine, but never go beyond itself. So we live in illusion, the illusion of control, of progress, of spiritual evolution. We imagine that by discipline, by method, by effort, we will one day arrive at a state of wholeness. But wholeness is not the end of a path. It is the absence of all paths. The human being has been conditioned to pursue expansion as a goal. Yet true expansion is not of the mind. It is the ending of the mind as we know it. The mind, as a bundle of experiences, fears, and ambitions, cannot touch what is infinite. It can only project it, dream about it, describe it in words, but never enter it. So perhaps the first step is not to seek potential at all, but to understand the machinery that keeps us confined, the machinery of thought, time, and desire. The machinery that says, I will be free tomorrow. But freedom does not exist in tomorrow. The moment you place it in the future, it becomes a concept, not a living fact. The illusion is subtle. It hides in spiritual language, in motivational slogans, in psychological theories. It tells you that you can become more conscious, that you can train awareness as you train a muscle. But awareness is not a muscle. It cannot be trained. It is there, or it is not. To see the illusion is the beginning of intelligence. To see it without condemnation, without trying to fix it, just to look. That is the beginning. The mind's potential cannot be unlocked through effort, because effort is the continuation of the old pattern, the me struggling to achieve. What if the mind's true potential is not something to be unlocked, but something that reveals itself when the seeker ends? So, one must watch. Watch how thought moves. Watch how desire disguises itself as aspiration. Watch how fear hides behind ambition. Watch not as an observer separate from what is seen, but as part of the movement itself. When you see clearly that every movement of thought creates division, the thinker and the thought, the seeker and the sought, then you begin to understand that the division itself is illusion. And in the ending of that illusion, a different kind of energy is released, not the energy of ambition, but of silence. And perhaps that silence is the true potential of the mind, not a power to be gained, but a flame to be seen. If the mind, as it is bound by conditioning, then what does it mean to transform it? Can a conditioned instrument bring about its own liberation, or is every attempt merely another layer of illusion? We have tried for centuries to refine thought, to discipline desire, to elevate emotion. Religions, philosophies and psychologies have offered endless methods: concentration, prayer, analysis, effort. Yet beneath all these movements, one question remains unasked: who is the one that seeks change? The mind says, I must become quiet. But who is the I? Is it not the same mind in motion, projecting a state of quietness as an ideal? The I is thought continuing itself, pretending to be the controller. When you look closely, there is no controller, only control as an idea. So can there be observation without control, watching without any motive to change? That seems paradoxical, yet it may be the only door out of illusion. The potential of the mind, we're told, lies in expansion, more knowledge, more creativity, more capability. But expansion implies direction, and direction implies choice guided by desire. And desire is born of memory, so every direction the mind takes is still within the field of the known. Can that which is infinite be reached by something that moves within the known? Or must the known completely end for the unknown to be? Let us examine the structure of the known. The mind lives by continuity, the continuity of memory, experience, thought. It says, I was this, I am that, I will be something else. This continuity gives the illusion of identity, but identity is a pattern, not a fact. It is an echo repeating itself across time. When you say, I want to unlock my mind's potential, you are merely extending that echo into the future. The words change: enlightenment, success, creativity, peace, but the movement is the same. It is still the self trying to become something more. To question deeply is to stop moving in any direction. It is to stand still within yourself, to look without demand. Can the mind do that? Can it stop running after results? If you observe, the mind is never still. Even in apparent silence, it is whispering, comparing, remembering. It says, this silence is good. I must hold on to it. The moment you name the silence, it is gone. The observer has returned, and with it the noise of measurement. So perhaps the unlocking of potential is not an achievement but an ending, the ending of effort, of comparison, of becoming. Yet the mind resists ending. It fears the unknown, the loss of its continuity. It clings to its patterns because they give it identity. The question then is, can there be awareness without the movement of self-preservation? When fear ends, the mind is no longer seeking security. When desire ends, it is no longer seeking satisfaction. In that ending, something new may come into being, not through will, not through discipline, but naturally, like a flower opening in sunlight. But can the mind allow that flowering, or does it immediately try to possess it? The moment you say, I am experiencing stillness, that stillness is already gone. Experience requires an experiencer, and that division is thought reasserting itself. So perhaps the real question is not how to unlock potential, But can there be perception without the perceiver? Watch the trees, the light on the wall, the sound of the wind. For a moment there is no interpreter. You simply see, hear, feel. In that instant of choiceless awareness, the mind is without center. It is vast, unbounded, alive. Then thought returns and says, "That was beautiful, I want it again." And the chase begins once more. The mind that seeks to repeat what was spontaneous has already fallen back into the known. The repetition of beauty becomes imitation, and imitation kills the living thing. So how do you live in such awareness without seeking to hold it? Can awareness be constant, or must it arise freshly each moment without accumulation? We want continuity because continuity feels safe, but the living mind is not continuous. It dies and is reborn every instant. It does not carry over the weight of yesterday. Look at your own experience. Each memory, each thought is an image, a symbol of what was, not what is. To respond from memory is to live from the past. The mind that operates from memory can never be free and therefore can never know its full potential. Freedom is not a concept. It is the ending of the known. The question how implies method, but any method conditions the mind further. The mind that follows a path becomes the path. It cannot discover anything new. So can one live without method, without direction, without the hope of becoming? This is the radical question. And to live with such a question, not intellectually but wholly, is to allow transformation to happen on its own. The mind must burn in its own inquiry. Every answer must dissolve under the flame of observation, because the moment an answer becomes truth, it becomes another prison. See how subtle this is. The mind wants certainty. Even in spirituality, it wants to know. But to know is to reduce, to define, to confine. The unknown cannot be captured by the net of knowledge. So can the mind stop seeking? Not as a discipline, not as a command, but as a natural seeing of the futility of seeking. When you truly see the uselessness of something, it drops away without effort. To question deeply is to allow everything false to end, not by will, but by understanding. And what remains when the false ends? Silence, not the cultivated silence of meditation techniques, but the silence that comes when the mind sees its own movement completely. In that silence, there is no I who observes. There is only observation. That silence is not empty. It is full of energy, of intelligence, of compassion. It is not yours or mine. It simply is. And in that stillness, perhaps the mind touches its true potential, which is not an achievement, but a revelation of what always was. When all effort ends, when the search dissolves, there remains a strange stillness, not something you reach, not something gained, but something that was always here, hidden, beneath the noise of becoming. In that stillness, the question of unlocking disappears, because what is there to unlock when the mind itself, with all its questions, has fallen silent? The mind, no longer seeking, no longer comparing, no longer measuring, is free. And in that freedom lies a beauty that cannot be sought. What does it mean for the mind to be free? Not free from something, but free in itself. The mind that seeks to be free from fear is still bound by the desire to escape. But when the mind simply sees fear without naming it, without judging it, without running, then fear reveals its whole structure. In the seeing of it completely, fear ends. That ending is the beginning of freedom. The clarity that comes is not the clarity of knowledge. Knowledge is of the past. It can only accumulate. Clarity is of the present. It has no continuity. It comes when the mind, empty of motive, meets life directly. Such a mind is not dull, not passive. It is extraordinarily alive. It perceives without distortion because it has no center from which to distort. In that perception, there is intelligence. Not the intelligence of books or systems, but the intelligence of direct seeing. Imagine a pool of water completely still, When there is no wind, the surface reflects the sky perfectly. When there is thought, emotion, ambition, the water is disturbed. The reflection is broken. The mind, in its stillness, reflects life as it is, not as it wishes it to be. That reflection, that mirror-like awareness, is clarity. You may ask, can such clarity remain in daily life, among noise, work, relationship, struggle? The question itself implies a division, the sacred and the ordinary, the meditative and the active. But life is one movement. The same mind that listens to the rain also listens to the insult, the praise, the cry of a child. When the mind is clear, every act, however small, is complete. We think of potential as expansion, to achieve more, to become greater. But the mind's true potential is not in its expansion, but in its depth, and depth cannot be cultivated. It appears only when the surface quiets. The mind that is free from effort, from ambition, from fear, becomes vast, not in quantity, but in quality. It perceives the subtle, the immeasurable. Have you ever noticed how a tree stands silently, rooted yet alive? It does not strive to grow. Growth happens naturally, silently, without conflict. The human mind, in its struggle to become something, has forgotten this effortless movement. But when conflict ends, growth, or rather flowering, happens on its own. Clarity is not something to be practiced. The very act of practicing implies direction, imitation. To practice awareness is to be unaware. But when you see the futility of practice, awareness awakens naturally because the mind has stopped interfering. This is not something mystical. It is utterly simple. When the mind sees the truth of its own limitation, that very seeing is the ending of limitation. Thought, by its nature, is limited. It divides, measures, names. It can never touch what is whole. Therefore, the full potential of the mind is realized not when thought expands, but when thought understands its limits and falls silent. Silence, then, is not the opposite of noise. It is not something created by withdrawing from life. It is the natural state of a mind that understands itself. In that silence, there is immense energy. Not the energy of desire, not the energy of ambition, but the energy of life itself. It is an energy untouched by motive, an energy that acts without resistance, without conflict. From that silence, right action flows. Not calculated action, not moral action according to belief or system, but action born of understanding. Such action is immediate, unpremeditated, whole. And because it is whole, it leaves no residue of regret or pride. It is complete in itself. When there is clarity, relationship changes. You no longer relate through image, through memory. You see the other as they are, not as you wish them to be, not as you fear they might be. This seeing is love. Love is not desire. Love is not attachment. Love is the absence of the self that seeks security. And only the silent mind can love, because only the silent mind is free. So the full potential of the mind is not in what it can do, but in what it is when doing ends. It is the potential to see, to listen, to be. This potential is infinite, not because it achieves infinite things, but because it is free from the boundaries of thought. When you see a sunset without naming it, without capturing it with words, there is only seeing. That pure seeing is creation. That moment of total awareness, without observer and observed, is the flowering of the mind's full potential. Do not seek it. Do not make it into a goal. The very search prevents it. Simply observe, not with the eyes of habit, but with a mind that is quiet, simple, and clear. Then you will see that the full potential of the mind is not hidden. It was never locked. It was never lost. It was only covered by the noise of becoming. And when that noise ends, what remains is vast, timeless, immeasurable, the silence that holds all things, the silence that is not yours, not mine. It simply is.